So I haven't talked a whole lot about the Superstar Racing Experience, and if you're not aware of what that is, it's a new all-star style stock car series that is the brainchild, a joint venture between Ray Evernham and Tony Stewart. Now, this series will run 6 events next year at Stafford Motor Speedway, Knoxville, Eldora, Lucas Oil Raceway in Indianapolis, Slinger Speedway, and then at the Nashville Fairgrounds in June and July of this year, and it will all be broadcast on the CBS Sports Network. The drivers in this series, quite frankly, are second to none, though certainly it's not a lot of drivers who are current in terms of their racing experience, and that's probably down due to contracts, but when you've got names like Marco Andretti, Michael Waltrip, Bill Elliott, Mark Webber, Elio Castroneves, Bobby Labonte, Willy T. Ribbs, Paul Tracy, Tony Kanaan, Tony Stewart, Ernie Francis Jr., you've definitely got an interesting mix of experience levels, stock car racing experience, and different racing experience just across the board. Formula One all the way down to stuff like Trans Am. So certainly it's an intriguing concept. Today, we got a look at the Superstar Racing Experience car. Now, this is a car that has been partially or at least mostly designed by Ray Evernham himself. And obviously, as you can see, it takes a lot of inspiration from stock cars of the 60s, particularly the Plymouth Superbird, the winged cars back in the 60s. In fact, there's really a lot of Pontiac in this, actually, now that I look at it. The front end in particular actually reminds me a little bit less of the Superbird and a little bit more of like a 1995 Pontiac. Now, I believe the base of the car, if it's not exactly, it's very similar to a TA2 Trans Am car, which I think a lot of people looked at and kind of said, oh, well, that should be the basis of what, or that should be what a stock car really looks like. And I would tend to agree with them. Now, Ray, again, kind of going with that 60s style, it's definitely going to be interesting. I think even specifically at one point he mentioned on Twitter that the wing on the back isn't going to be so much for downforce as it is going to be for show. And I certainly do think as well that it's interesting that they're going to be running a car that looks like this on dirt. To my knowledge, the Superbirds and stock cars of that never ran dirt. Now, I'm happy to be corrected on that, but I thought they were traditionally super speedway cars. We do know that this car does not have a splitter. I remember specifically that was something that Ray Evernham was going to do, and there was some Twitter backlash to it, and he backed out of it. I have to say from the front, I don't know how I feel about the louvers on the front of the car. I'm looking at the first photo here. The louvers are definitely interesting, as well as kind of that bulge on the hood. I always kind of like stock cars that have perhaps a more clean look to them. I kind of think that louvers and bulges, those are really more of like an open wheel or a sports prototype thing. For stock cars, I kind of like a much more smooth body look. It's weird too. It does look a little bit stocky, and I don't mean stock in the sense of stock car. I mean it looks kind of wide and it looks kind of short. You know what I mean? It's kind of like a linebacker rather than like an endurance sprint runner. Here's the front of the car, the next photo, and I guess it makes those louvers look a lot less aggressive than it did on the first photo. And the roof line, that's the other thing that I really like about this car that I've seen, especially like NASCAR stock cars, get away from quite a bit, which is, at least to me, the Gen 6 car looks like it's like really, really tall and really, really narrow. And to me, when I'm looking at a stock car, this is kind of the look I'm looking for. Wide and low. Even if the roof line is, closer to a Gen 6 car than maybe this photo gives you the impression of, I definitely like how this car looks from the front for sure. That's lean, that's aggressive. Those cars will look really cool on TV. Here's another very similar photo to the first one. So not a whole lot else I can say about this. I guess the one thing is the grille on front is in the shape of an X, which of course is on on point for the brand. I also wonder if they're going to go full IROC and paint all the cars different colors. I don't know if I like the cars being base color gray. If they're going to keep that livery, I would almost want them to paint everything that you see in orange in white or black or gray, and then have everything that's on this car gray be the base color to differentiate the drivers. I do think we're going to see a lot of inspiration, let's put it, from IROC, even if they don't explicitly state it. The only difference I would say is we're finally kind of flipping to the last photo about this versus IROC is that IROC was cool because it was the modern drivers. This is almost going to be like a senior tour in like if this was golf, you know what I mean? So I don't know how it's going to work out. In fact, I look at this angle right here, and I'm looking at the rear and kind of how it's shaped. It really does give me like Gen 4 stock car vibes. If you kind of look past the wing, if you kind of look behind the rear window there. I don't know if I like the wing. I have to tell you guys. I almost feel like I would prefer the wing to be gone, but we'll have to see how it races. That's going to be the part that I won't be able to speak on until we see it, because again, I'm not an engineer. I don't know what kind of dirty air that wing will create. I don't know how that will affect the racing. I don't know how that's going to work on dirt. It could be awesome, or it could be a disaster. But I think it'll probably be good TV. That's for sure. But again, we're kind of I don't know. I'm torn. I really am torn on the Superstar racing experience. That's part of the reason I haven't talked about it a whole lot. I don't know if this concept is something that's really going to sell. I do think that Tony Stewart and Ray Evernham are two very smart people, and they definitely know what they're doing, so I have a hard time doubting them. But at the same time, the concept of older stars, and not necessarily guys like Dale Jr. and Jeff Gordon, you've got Ernie Francis Jr. and Marco Andretti in this series. So you're already kind of, in some ways, at least in terms of star power, kind of working with an A- to B+ cast, rather than maybe an A+ that you would want to really get people invested in this series. But at the same time, this is something that's totally different than anything pretty much except for IROC, and it could very well fill a niche. We're just gonna kind of have to see how it plays out. Again, it could be a beautiful disaster, or it could be a really exciting series. I don't know. What do you think? Let me know down in the comments. SRX Superstar Racing Experience. Will you be going to any of these races? Will you be watching on TV? Do you have any interest in all of this? I'm guessing if you've gotten to this point in the video, you probably have, but you never know. Some people could have watched this long and just gone, I don't like it. I don't know. We'll see you in the next video.